Well, thought I would just make this video be fast. I decided to set up Axis and Allies Nova and give a brief overview of it. So this is the original Axis and Allies. There's Axis and Allies that came out by Milton Bradley in '84, but this version actually predates it. I wonder if I can find a copyright. So I'll in the back. Copyright 81 by Nova Game Design. Once again, it is by, if we look at it, Lawrence H. Harris. It is Axis and Allies. This is the very first published version of Axis and Allies, and first time it appeared under this name. The prototype version was called 1942, but they renamed it because it sounded better than just saying 1942. They didn't have the production quality to use miniatures. Larry Harris wanted to use miniatures. Indeed, his prototype used miniatures, but for production's sake, they used cardboard, and you get this card stock for your setup. Very interesting colors. It's the same turn order to Classic. It's very similar to Classic, same units as Classic, but there are quite a few differences. But once again, it's USSR, but in this game they're orange, followed by Germany, which is green. Also, they have a swastika there, they have a swastika on the board. Then it's United Kingdom in red, Japan in yellow, and USA in blue. You get to see their flags. USA 48 star flag. The Japanese get their normal Japanese flag, but on the board, they're going to use the, right there they show the rising sun flag. I think as for the pieces they use just the normal flag, the same flag shown on there. We get, of course, the territories, and there's some very interesting territories. A lot less of the board is allocated, I want to say, in the same way. So all the French territories in Africa, such as Madagascar and Equatorial Africa and all that stuff, those are neutral now. These grays are neutral zones. So Brazil is neutral now. And they're not even named except for, none of the neutrals are named except for Turkey and some other special cases. Which is actually pretty interesting because I'm looking, they have some credits for the map graphics down there. Interesting. But, so these are neutral. And just like Classic, you can pay 3 IPCs to just take it. And then you have these interesting neutrals here that are pro-allied to a certain nation, and they give money to that nation. So Persia's neutral, but they give 2 IPCs. All the IPCs are times by 100. You can see there. You can see the unit cost there, all times 100. But it's a neutral. They'll give 2 IPCs to Britain. Iraq is neutral to British. Saudi Arabia is neutral to USA, and so is Venezuela. China, entirely neutral. So in the later versions, of course, China, there would be fighting happening there, but in this version, there's not really, unless if you want to pay some money. Spain and Sweden are even in this version. Interestingly enough, with the starting setup, you see American units in Britain already at the start. You see American units in Australia and in New Zealand at the start. There's this interesting division of these territories. You have control of Italian East Africa, even control of Syria up there. So overall, it makes it look very interesting. Definitely one I think needs more attention, needs to be played more. But I think there'll be really some interesting strategies that happen. There's no factory limit. By that I mean you can place as many units as you want at a factory, but there is a unit limit. You're limited to the amount of units that actually come in the game. So you're limited to have 20 infantry max on the board, because there's only 20 infantry each nation has. So Russia, for example, starts with all their infantry on the board. So on the very first turn, since they go first, they can't buy infantry. They have to buy something else, and like a few tanks that they have remaining. And then, I don't know if they would still have money left over, but if they did, they can't buy any tanks or infantry with that. And so that's sort of a way of negating that, right? Because you would think, okay, a factory, but it's unlimited. But it's not good at the same time, because you might not be able to buy all the units you want. You sort of have to maybe lose units in another part of the board, like to them be able to buy those units next turn on the other side of the board. Additionally, if this was something like Classic, you could build a factory in China, but you can't as the USA because that's neutral. You could violate your own neutrality, so the British could actually pay 3 APCs and take over Persia and something like that. There's not really a reason to do that. But the final thing I want to talk about for this brief introduction to this version is the optional rules. They have this interesting weapons development, and they have rules for the atomic bomb. I think it's supposed to be very powerful. It eliminates all units in the province or sea zone, including industrial complexes. So if they only have one factory and you bomb it, well, that's going to be very troublesome for them. So extremely powerful. And you have to... How does the research work? I think it's sort of the same way as... Yeah, it's the same way as the later games where you pay. In this version, you have 5 IPCs on a roll of 6, and then you got your weapons development table. And then, but you have jet power rockets, super sub, but just atomic bomb right there. Oh, in 5th column, you may enter neutral territory for no cost. But then not only that, you have these special rules for different nations. So the Japanese have kamikazes. They can designate up to 1 fighter each turn as a kamikaze unit and does not have to land. The US has Marines, the British have the Home Guard, the Germans have the Panzer Corps, and the Soviets have the movement of industry, so they can move the industrial complexes. Also, weirdly enough, so the Soviets have a complex in Moscow, and the other ones in Kazakhstan. Just oddly enough, I guess they didn't want to be on the front line, but a bit weird. Speaking of weird, you might have noticed that the colors are extremely weird. Germany is green. I think I mentioned that when I showed the cards. Really weird. Like, out of all the colors that are the weirdest, Germany being green is the weirdest of the weirdest. But it's something that makes this version one of the most unique I've ever seen. They even have some really odd territories, like Sakhalin Island. That's not in any other Axis and Allies version, I believe. Those islands just right there. Also, they show Greenland, but it's not even named, so does that make it even a territory? Well, surely it has to be, because they don't name these neutrals, but these are still neutrals. A bit weird, but some map ambiguities. But overall, I think that's going to be the end of my introduction to this game. Let's see if I can get a game of this going, and I hope that this sort of piqued your interest into this more obscure original version of the game. I really like the text with the different flags as the background. And so with that ends the introduction for Axis and Allies Nova Edition.